All right, and we are now recording with Connor Graham, who is what's your exact title?
I'm the director of sports performance at Redline Athletics in Westchester, north of Cincinnati.
So I know you have a baseball background as well. Can you give everyone just a little bit of backstory of how you kind of came up in baseball and just how you got to where you're at now?
Yeah, definitely. I grew up in Bowling Green, Ohio. I did play in the Cincinnati area for the Midland Redskins the year before college. Was a pitcher at Miami of Ohio for 3 years. I was drafted in the fifth round by the Rockies in '07, and that was kind of the start of my pro career. Got traded to Cleveland in '09. Spent a couple years there, got hurt, got released, signed with the Rockies again, got released again, and played indie ball for my last year and a half, and then I ended up having surgery, and unfortunately didn't really come back from that. So that's kind of where the performance training kind of career started for me then.
So when you were at Miami, Ohio, how hard were you throwing then?
I came in like kind of like a typical righty, probably topping out at 93 in fall ball, and at the time didn't really realize what happened. About 4 weekends into the season, I think I hit 100 for the first time.
Whoa. And that was, I mean, that's not recent with all the higher velocity. That was a few years ago.
Yeah, I'm old. That was 05? Yeah, 2005.
Wow.
So it was a little while ago. Back then, I didn't realize like what kind of changed to make this happen. It's a lot easier to look back now. In high school, strength training wasn't really a part of what we did. We kind of, I thought we worked hard back then, but the weight room was usually the football team dominated it, and there was a lot of squat, bench, clean, more bench, and then some bicep curls. And I realized that I didn't excel in the weight room then, and I didn't do it because back then pitchers ran poles and we didn't train.
Right.
And fast forward to college and living in a weight room, getting really strong, and the velocity came pretty quickly after that.
And then once you got into pro ball, what was that adjustment like, and how often? I know you said you got injured at the end of your career, but where were you dealing with injuries early on too?
No, honestly, minus the occasional, rougher weeks, you're a little bit more sore after an outing, but it wasn't anything really debilitating. Honestly, the only thing that put me on the DL until I was actually hurt were blisters. So outside of that, I remained fairly healthy. The thing that, and I think this is kind of feeding into how I got into strength and conditioning as well. Unlike a lot of strength coaches, you hear them say, in high school I found the weight room and it helped me succeed. I got lucky and I was 6'7" about, and got up to 100 miles an hour without really training all that much.
Yeah.
And I unfortunately coasted more than I should have, and wasn't really till the end of my career that I realized, oh my God, like I can't just coast. I'm in AA and everybody is as good or better than me. I didn't really figure out that the training side of things was important until it was definitely too late for me personally.
Mm-hmm.
But that kind of guided what I wanted to do after my pro career. Because near the end, I realized something's got to change. I need to take care of my body. I need to prepare better. I can't just expect to walk out on the field and perform the same way I always have.
I'm curious because I've heard this before about blisters. Like, how is that? I'm not a pitcher, but how can that be a thing where you can go on the DL for blisters?
I didn't realize how. I thought it was a fluke with me, but I know when I was with Cleveland, Kerry Wood rehabbed with us a couple times, and he actually gave me some of the tips that he'd used because he had like chronic blister issues as well. I think probably the issue with me is we ended up. I'm pretty sure that I'm not pretty sure. I know for a fact this is not legal in baseball, but putting super glue all over my finger. I'm like doctoring it up as much as I can, and I think we were in Bowie. And I threw a pitch, and it tore off some super glue, some Dermabond, and a bunch of skin.
Jeez.
And it was an open, the whole pad of my middle finger was raw and bleeding on the baseball. And I was out for about a month, not really being able to throw at all without stuff on it.
What was that, Rich Hill, who was having those, it was a ton of blister issues?
Was he? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's, I don't know if it was something specifically that I did or it was just me. I'm not sure. But I've heard of some guys dealing with it, and certain climates made it worse, but it was interesting.
After you played affiliate, I know you played in the Independent League, the Atlantic League.
Mm-hmm.
What was that like? And we'll get into what some of the changes that they've made recently, but what was the Atlantic League like?
The thing that surprised me initially, because coming early in my career until basically up until when I really got hurt, like I was usually a top prospect, and maybe I was a little cocky and thought I was somebody, but looked down on independent baseball. And I think at times the Atlantic League was the best baseball I played. The talent, maybe the end of the bullpen or the end of the lineup wouldn't necessarily match a AA or AAA team, but I mean the talent was unbelievable. I mean there's ex-big leaguers on every team. Every year guys that got signed and made it to the big leagues that year. So it was pretty cool being able to play with guys that I played against earlier in my career, but then also you learn a lot of lessons when Dontrell Willis is one of your teammates, Armando Benitez. Like it was an interesting experience for sure.
What do you think about the changes that the Atlantic League made this past offseason?
I don't know. It's
the mound's back farther. I think the bases are bigger. There's a bunch of other changes too.
There's some time, I know there's some time changes as well,
yeah.
And I think I understand why Major League Baseball wants to test some of those things. I think it's a little too early to speak to how it's going to play out, but I don't think it's going to be as clear-cut as people think. I think moving the mound back, people automatically assume hitters are going to have an advantage. I don't think that's going to be the case. Tell me that Chris Sale's stuff gets worse if his pitches have more room to move. I think depending on the guy, it could actually make stuff better. But it's too early to see. But it's an interesting change that I can't say that I'm upset that I'm not there having to do it.
Well, I was wondering about arm injuries too, from a pitching standpoint, with the mound back further.
I honestly don't think it's going to make as big a difference as what people think it could. Most pitchers that do a decent job of taking care of their arm train at or above the level of demand that they're going to have in a game. I don't think it's going to have an effect on injuries, but that being said, it's multifactorial. There's so many different things that could factor into how that affects a pitcher throughout the year. So I think it'll be interesting to see, but I don't know if anyone's going to have an accurate guess at what's really going to happen.
I just don't know why they decided to make the change in the Atlantic League. Like, that's the cream of the crop for independent leagues. Why not go to? I mean, the Pecos League is that's pretty bad. Maybe like the Frontier or American Association. I don't know why the Atlantic League.
I think the Atlantic League is a well-run business, and an official partnership like that with Major League Baseball is probably something that is something that I know they've been wanting to achieve for a while, and this probably just made the most sense right now. And it's not like other things haven't been tried there as well. So it's using it as a testing ground isn't, I think, the worst idea. I'm just glad I'm washed up and don't have to do it.
How hard do you think you could throw now if you could get your arm back in shape?
We've tested that a couple times, and it doesn't go well, and I can't lift my arm up for a while. Unfortunately, it's probably the hardest I've ever worked in my life was trying to rehab, and it just didn't work out for me. My range of motion is god awful right now. I think if I really worked on that, I could maybe touch 90.
Mm-hmm.
And
What was
then
your or what ended your career? What injury?
I had rotator cuff and labrum surgery, so multiple anchors, um, supraspinatus and infraspinatus repairs. It it was kind of ugly. It wasn't great, but at least for right now, I can throw BP, I can lift weights, I can play catch. I just can't do the things I used to be able to do.
Did you do any type of strength work back then when you were playing, like in season?
Yeah, I did. It was always inconsistent for me in season. It's one of the things that I struggled with my own plan, was finding something that consistently worked and sticking to it. And depending on the coach and where I was, there were some different philosophies here and there, and I changed my preparation with that as well. But I was never. I'm pretty confident that if I would have been as consistent as I asked my athletes to be, doing the right things, that I probably could have had a longer career, and who knows what could have happened then.
When your career was over, at what point did you get really interested in the strength conditioning just aspect?
So when I knew that I needed surgery, I enrolled back in school. I signed before I graduated, so started school again, scheduled surgery, and I got about a semester in, had surgery, and then finished up. And that's when I knew, like in the back of my mind, it was something I was always interested. Even at Miami initially, that was always an interest of mine. I wanted initially to do athletic training, and they told me you can't do that and play. So I wasn't sure what to do after that. But I had some strength coaches I liked in pro ball and in college, and over the years saw that this is something that I can combine with the knowledge I've gained about baseball, and combine the two, because I don't think like when I train a pitcher now, it's impossible for me to not look through the lens of a performance coach and a pitching coach, because there's too many things now that I can do to help an athlete that we've talked about it before with you doing On Base U. If you're expecting an athlete to perform a certain thing in their swing and in a pitch, whatever, and they don't have the physical capabilities to do that, you can throw every drill in the book at them. It's not going to matter. So yeah. Combining the two, that's what really got me motivated to I really want to dive into exercise science and kind of pair that with the pitching training as well.
How long did it take you to get to a point where you were doing that full time?
I don't even remember now. I had 2 years of school. I changed my major. Some stuff didn't transfer. So it was about 2 years. I was volunteering a little bit during it. Had an absolutely amazing internship at a facility called Donskoff Strength and Conditioning in Columbus. They train almost primarily hockey players, but some wrestlers, some general population as well. But that probably fast-tracked me to where I am right now, compared to some of my other peers who didn't have the experience I did as an intern. I was challenged constantly, and I think that really, like I said, kind of fast-tracked my growth as a coach.
I think I've read a few times where Eric Cressius has said the same thing, where you need to go out and get real-world experience, because just reading a book and just going to classes, it's not enough, and
yeah.
You don't know what it's like to be able to coach someone who is really positive all the time, and then someone else who's attitude's maybe not the greatest, and it's it takes a skill to be able to handle different types of personalities and ages, and just there's so many other factors too that aren't taught in a book.
Yeah, no, I mean it's definitely true, and just getting reps. If my ultimate goal is to train pitchers and baseball players, talking to Eric and then Pete Dupuis, his business guy as well, they'll tell you don't niche down, coach everybody, get as many coaching reps as you can, because I've learned things from training synchronized swimmers that has helped me train a pitcher better. There's no replacement for just kind of putting in the time and getting the coaching reps. And then, and personalities too. Like in the strength and conditioning world, Brett Bartholomew is a pretty well-known name. He wrote a book called Conscious Coaching that talks about that, like different archetypes, different types of athletes, and how you can motivate those athletes and coach them better. Because not everyone's going to respond to the same thing. And I agree with that.
So take me through kind of what you would do when a baseball player comes in to train. Let's just start out as a pitcher.
Yeah, I think step one is just a little interview. First of all, find out why they're there. Find out what they've done in the past, what's worked, what hasn't worked, injury history. You can gather a lot of information, and you can really get down to what their motivation is for being there. After the initial interview, a movement assessment, find out what they're capable of doing, and that can kind of lead me down different paths. So with a lot of our pitchers, we'll start with some tabletop assessment, looking at hip range of motion, looking at T-spine range of motion. We'll look at scapular positioning, both just static position and then dynamic control as well. And then from there, moving, the assessment can kind of tell me where I need to go and look at more things. Doing a movement assessment at Redline, we use Fusionetics, looking at general movement patterns. It's a really good way to watch and see how that athlete's brain kind of problem solves movement. And from there, you can find out, okay, these compensation patterns, let's try to find out what the root cause is and attack that. And it's an easy way to identify some low-hanging fruit for that athlete that more often than not can make much bigger changes.
How many days a week would you put a program together for, like a pitcher, for example?
Depending, a lot of things factor in. Age of the athlete, training age of the athlete, time of year. So it can range from 2 days a week up to
in season. That would be 2 days a week.
And even off season too, depending on the age and the training age of the athlete. If an athlete's never walked into a facility like this, they can step into this weight room and get stronger.
Yeah.
So for them, 2 days a week, teaching them how to move really well can have a huge impact. But then I'll have college and professionals who in the off season will be in here 6 days a week. So it'll vary depending on, several factors. The sweet spot usually seems to be about 3 days a week in the off season. 1 to 3 days a week in season, depending on, a pitching rotation or someone's schedule.
I don't know if you've seen this with pitching too, but with hitting, I've seen this as kids get older. It is so hard to alter their movement patterns in their swing. And what I like to tell parents is, because sometimes I'll get questions asked like, do I really need to start my kid, doing movement work or strength work at a young age? And I always say yes, not because I think that they need to get really strong. They need the proper movement. And again, it's just the older you get, it becomes extremely hard to alter the central nervous system. And I see it all the time with older kids, and it's like, man, wish we could go back in time. I wish we could go back in time, but that's what I tell all the parents out there with younger kids. It is extremely important because you only get one chance to do it right.
Yeah.
And after those movements are programmed, it's just, you can create new movement patterns, but it's really tough.
Yeah, it really is. And there's people that have different strategies to do it. That, like you said, the best way is let's take these windows of trainability and do it well at a young age. That's why I start working with athletes at 8 and 9 years old. Now, what we do with an 8 and 9 year old, does that look like what someone would think performance training looks like? Possibly not. It may look a little bit more like phys ed, but I want to teach them fundamental movement patterns. I want to teach them how to hinge. I want to teach them how to squat. I want to teach them how to do those things. And maybe it's not with a barbell or a kettlebell or but I'm teaching those movement patterns at a young age. So then later on, it can scale. We can layer that. We can build off that. And then with older athletes, like, you have to get a little bit more creative. I know external cueing has been huge, both in strength and conditioning and baseball as well. I think there's a time when, if you're trying to change a motor program like walking, external cues aren't going to be enough to change someone's gait.
Right.
Like that's not going to work that well. And I think throwing and swinging can be similar. I mean, I had an athlete in today who's 15 years old. He's probably been throwing since he was 2 years old now. Pitching, no, but he's been throwing stuff for a long time. Changing those patterns, sometimes you have to make them aware. And then, other times maybe you want to use more external cues. Maybe you want to get the glove off, get the baseball out of their hand. We were throwing PVC pipes today, using plyo-care balls, using different implements that can kind of free the brain up a little bit and stop having it go straight to that program that's written as pitching, and try to kind of rewrite a more efficient pattern.
So for high school kids, is it imperative that they lift? Like, do you have to lift heavy and low reps to get stronger? Because, I mean, I know it used to be where it's lightweight, high reps. And I know it's everything's like, people are starting to get more information, smarter. The average person out there.
I think if you were looking at just traditionally for a trained athlete, and especially for a baseball player too, there's not a ton of the year where we need to be sitting in rep ranges that are higher volume and more focused on hypertrophy. A lot of our athletes are under 6 reps for multiple sets. Depending on what the athlete's needs are, that can change. If I have a kid who is undersized and needs to put some weight on and we have some time, that's going to change the program a little bit. But other athletes, we may be sitting in, depending on the time of year, depending on the programming scheme I'm using for that athlete, it's going to be your more traditional multiple set under 5 or 6 reps, and then it's the best answer and it's the most frustrating answer. Is it depends.
Yeah, it depends. Yeah, it's different for each person.
It can be viewed as a cop out, but it really is. Like, there's so much information out there right now that there's no excuse for a coach to hand 30 people this workout. And in some schools, that's a hard thing to ask for. In my setting, there's nights where I have 9 coaches working. It's negligent for me to take a high school kid and not individualize the training for that person.
Yeah, I completely agree. And you can kind of relate and just like take that and apply it to hitting, apply it to pitching. What do you think about pitchers long tossing?
Same thing. I think but at the same time, I think everything has value. It all depends on how you're going to use it. It's people like to say weighted baseballs are bad. Is the squat rack behind us bad? Is the barbell bad? No, like, none of those things are bad. It's how you use an implement that's going to make it positively impact an athlete. So if you want to long toss 7 days a week and try to max out every day, yeah, that's probably not good. But if you can manage stress and use that tool how it was probably designed in the first place to be used, I think it's phenomenal.
Did you used to long toss when you played?
Yeah, I sucked at it though. I'm not really good at backspinning baseballs. So my long toss is my throwing partner is here and I'm trying to throw it about 20 yards that way and just let it just kind of like run back.
Yeah.
So when I was in AA with Cleveland, we had a pretty big hitter's eye, and we got chewed out for this, but I think it was Nick Hagedorn, who, big, massive, strong lefty who just absolutely threw fuzz, decides that he's just going to long toss a ball over the hitter's eye. And, of course, he does it. I'm like, crap, all right. And then Carlos Santana does the same thing. I'm like, okay, if he's doing it, I'm doing this.
Yeah.
And I'm like, in front of the warning track. I'm like, man. So that, yeah. my version of long toss.
Your version of long. Well, I mean, you could also throw 100 miles an hour. So
not
I mean,
often. In pro ball, it probably only happened. I don't know, 2 times, 3 times.
well, doesn't Trevor Bauer long toss every day?
I don't know if he does or not. I mean, I know
he's really big into.
I mean, there's certain guys that can handle a lot more volume of that throwing, and your definition of long toss can be different. If someone has the ability to throw the ball 350 feet, if they're throwing at 280, like that's not a really high RPE for them. Like that's not a high intense throw, but 280 for me might be pretty intense. So, I mean, just like anything else, just like in the weight room, just like any type of training, like managing workloads and managing stress and recovery, that's going to kind of dictate, when it's a good tool to use.
What could the average, we have people listening to this all over the country. What could the average person who has as a kid who's 6, 7, 8 years old be doing to help them now, so later on it's a little bit easier in their career from a strength side?
I mean, for like the young athletes, I mean, play outside, climb trees, jump fences. I know that sounds kind of funny, but it doesn't happen as often. Like me as a parent, like I find myself being, a little nervous, like not wanting my daughters to run around the neighborhood. Like I have to stop and be like, they're fine, let them go, because there's so many kids that are stuck inside playing Xbox all day.
Yeah.
And then for the kids that get older, there's facilities like ours that do a good job of teaching kids fundamentals of movement, because it's not always taught in schools the same way it was when we were younger. There's not year-round sport participation. Like when I was a kid, for me, baseball was the summer, and then fall was a different sport, and winter was a different sport, and spring was a different sport. So I had a wide diet, like a wide variety of movement that I would go through yearly, and we don't see that as often now. So that would be my recommendation: is get active, and when you're to the point where the kid's mature enough to say, no, I want to work harder to get better at something, find a qualified performance coach who can kind of guide them along that journey.
Because another reason I ask you that is I get questions all the time from people, from mainly hitting, but a few pitching recently too, where they don't know like how many days a week should their kid be throwing, how far, what drills should they be doing, how should they find their proper arm slot.
And like honestly, and this, I don't know if people will like this or hate this, but like for the young kids, throw hard. Like, how many guys have you ever heard of that picked up baseball when they were 17 and got to the big leagues pitching? It doesn't happen.
Not very often.
I mean, there's actual physical changes that happen when you throw hard at a young age, and if you don't have humeral retroversion, you're not going to get layback, which means you're not going to throw hard. I love when I have a young kid come in and the dad's like, oh, he just throws as hard as he can and he doesn't know where it's going. I'm like, sweet. Like, let's teach this kid how to throw fuzz.
Yeah.
And then when he's 14, 15, we can, yes, like, I don't want someone that throws 100 miles an hour and literally has no idea where it's going, but it's a lot easier to take someone that has clean movement patterns and can throw with intent and teach them how to attack a strike zone than it is to take someone who is 18 years old, throws 70 poo, but can really dot up. Like, yeah. That's great, but you're going to hang up your cleats the last day of senior year. Like, you're never going to play again.
Dr. Rose is on next week's episode, and he said the same thing with hitting too. He's like, try and swing, try and hit it as far as you can. It's like, we can always work on the mechanical stuff later on.
Yeah.
Kind of like you're talking about right there, right? You only get one chance to really kind of let it go, and I don't know. It's tough to ingrain that in kids later on. The later on you get.
Yeah, it really is, and at a younger age, it's a unique time where training speed and power can be very successful. Like, we do a very good job at taking 9, 10, 11, 12-year-old kids And whether you like it or not, we performance test when they come in. We set a baseline, and we do a really good job at making those kids faster. We don't do anything fancy, but at that age, you're like in a time where your brain really likes some of the stimuli that we give it, and it's going to make an athlete faster and more explosive. And throwing and swinging are going to be no different. So taking advantage of this time frame and using it well means when puberty hits, now we get to throw some more strength and size and mass behind those clean movement patterns and explosiveness. Like that's a pretty good equation for throwing hard and hitting bombs.
Which is what I like to do. I know recently you just got a Rapsodo as well. What do you think of that?
I love it because no matter what, I can't see everything, and it gives me the ability to give feedback to an athlete that's not an opinion. And I there's certain people that I've used it with that like they want to dive in and they want to understand. There's other people that are like, don't tell me my spin rate, tell me what to do, tell me how to make myself better. But it's an unbelievable tool in terms of pitch design. I can't tell you how many athletes I've seen already where you look at the movement profiles of their pitch and it's just one big clump. And that big clump isn't one pitch, it's 3 pitches with the exact same movement profile. And for me, that's like this makes my job, I mean, I guess easier, not easier. I mean, it's hard work to, design pitches that play well off each other but are differentiated. But it makes it really easy then when we're going through the process of, okay, your 4-seam and your 2-seam right now are the same pitch. We can either make them different or pick one. And if we're deciding to make them different, now I have a tool that from pitch to pitch, combining that with high-speed video, we can differentiate those pitches and make them work much better together than just having the exact same movement profile.
Yeah, it is really cool. I know they have one for hitting too, but I know the pitching one is really taken off. I know organizations, I think every single organization has one now. I forget who it was with the Marlins. Was it Dan Straley? I think he was at Driveline. Anyway, the Marlins, as you all know, are really behind everything else when it comes to analytics and technology. And they weren't going to even buy a Rapsodo. I know for some other tech companies that they weren't interested in that anyway. But I know Dan had to personally purchase his own Rapsodo and would use it in bullpens before games. And so when the Marlins were like, well, can we look at that data? We're just kind of curious. He's like, no, you can't. Like, no, it's just mine. But it's funny because it's where the game is going, and why wouldn't it? I mean, it's made every other facet of human life better and easier. I mean, why wouldn't it help in baseball?
Yeah, and it's true. And I mean, you talked about Dr. Greg Rose, like he's said, and it's not just him. There's people in the baseball industry now recognizing as well. Like, baseball is so far behind golf. Golf has been ahead for, decades if you think about it. But like just recently, they've embraced technology, and shocker, it's working.
Yeah.
Like it makes sense. Now, how you utilize it's one thing. Like, I can't stand there with a tablet or a screen and just look at that while I'm working with the pitcher.
Yeah, and say move your right arm to a little bit 2 inches higher.
Those things, like, you're not going to create any context for an athlete who maybe they have zero interest in that, and all they want is, I want to punch tickets. Like, I want to have filthy stuff. Teach me how to have filthy stuff. Like, you still need to have some of that. Like, you need the old school coach's eye and probably vocabulary, but be aware that let's use the technology that's out there now to help us as coaches, but then help our athletes. There's no excuse not to attempt that. I know it's cost prohibitive for some people, but there's ways that you can use the new technology to help you develop athletes, and it's had a huge impact for us. So
I think one of the main reasons why I like coming up here and working with you guys, and pretty excited for just kind of the future of working with you guys too, is it's so important from a hitting perspective and I'm sure from a pitching one too, that the weight room is not too far away, right? Because for so many kids, yes, doing drills, hitting drills is important. Yes, hitting batting practice, seeing velocity, getting comfortable with velocity is important too. But for a lot of kids, it's like just as important, probably if not more, as if I'm, working with a strength coach or and just saying, hey, I did a physical screen on him. He's having some hip mobility issues. Like, let's see if you can kind of take care of that. We can work on that together, and we'll work on that and try to work around that at the same time while we're hitting. But I just, like I said, and that's why I'm kind of excited for this upcoming summer, where we're doing a summer training program where you can come hit like 4 to 6 days a week. Lift, pitchers, same thing, and it's going to be really, really cool because 20 feet away we have this weight room and cages over there, and I can screen all the hitters, go through the on-base U screen, and it's going to make more sense because long term, no athlete wants to guess. And so utilizing some of the types of technology like K-Vest, like Rapsodo, like Blast Motion, it's where the game's going, and I'm glad we're going in the same direction.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited. I know I've been, I think the first time we talked was probably almost a year ago now, and I just had to keep bugging you a little bit, and I'm pumped to be working together because I think we're providing something to athletes that most of them, and honestly even to the professional level, you hear it all the time that professional pitchers aren't getting their Rapsodo data. They don't get their TrackMan data. They don't have access to those things. The teams board that data and they don't share it. We're giving athletes the technology and the information that the biggest organizations in the world use on a daily basis, but we're going to teach them how to use it. We're going to find how each athlete wants to use that. And not only that, we're going to combine it with working with a physical therapist to go even deeper into, if there are issues that are outside of my scope of practice as a certified strength and conditioning specialist. That's fine. I've got a guy with a baseball background that's going to help you. The individualized strength training. And not only that, it's nice to be able to do a movement assessment and design programs based off the movement assessment, injury history, training history, goals of the athlete, but then the athlete's working with me and you. So we're gathering so much information on a daily basis to provide the best possible training experience for them. I'm beyond excited.
Yeah, and when I was out on base U, one of the things that they would use is the pit crew phrase, and where in the pit crew, like, you have the driver, you have the team, you have the mechanic, right, and they're all working together for that one common goal, and it's kind of going to be this similar situation here where my background is in strength. Yours is, so I can communicate with you, and then vice versa. And the way I look at it from a hitting perspective and a hitting coach is, if someone told me growing up, hey, to be the best hitter like you possibly can, what would you do? I'd be like, well, I'd probably hit a lot. And so that's why I think having it set up the way we are, where you can come in and hit 6 days a week if you want to. It's just, and it's like that with kind of anything, like getting strong, like pitching. So I'm glad we have it set up the way we do. I'm excited because we do have K-Vest, which is, in my opinion, the most important piece of technology from the hitting side anyway that's out there, and it allows me not to have to guess what's going on. It tells me.
Yep.
And so that's what I like. I like the objective feedback. I know you do as well with Rapsodo.
I'm excited because we're putting a lot of the pieces together, and we're taking the problem of communication between multiple different people. That's not an issue anymore, because we're going to be able to communicate not just daily or weekly. I literally can talk, hey, I worked with so-and-so today. This is what he said you guys were working on. Let's talk about it, how I can help from the strength side, so you can start seeing those changes happen quicker in the cage. So I'm excited because it's an integrative approach that it's not common to see that, and we're putting together probably the best program we can right now, and I'm excited about it.
So for position players or pitchers, what's the best way to get in contact?
Best way to get in contact to get started for the summer would be to email me. It's cgraham, Graham, at redlineathletics.com. That would be the best way.
In Cincinnati, Ohio, as well.
Yep.
So yeah, it's gonna be great. Pretty pumped about it, and also another thing that we added. I know a lot of people charge for doing recruiting videos and all that stuff. That's also included. It's part of the package. What are the prices right now?
Right now we're doing a kind of like a pre-sale. So if you sign up before the end of April, it's $9.55 for the summer. After that, it is $115 a month or $115 a week for technically 11 weeks. With some flexibility on, college kids that get out of school earlier or have to start later, they'll just work with me, and we'll make sure we put together the schedule that works best for them.
Sounds good, man. Well, again, appreciate you coming on, and I'm pretty pumped for the summer.
Yeah, man, thank you. I mean, it's a real honor. I'm a long-time listener, first-time caller kind of deal. So I'm really excited and honored that you asked me to do it.
Absolutely.